So for 2025, I read a grand total of 37 books. Okay, majority of them were nonsense. A lot of them were a waste of time, and a lot of them I wouldn't recommend. That's it. So I wasted a lot of hours reading shit that, in hindsight, is irrelevant. Right. So in 2026, I'm gonna focus on reading what's important, like the classics is what I deem important, right? So if it was made 150 years ago and it's still important 150 years later, that book's important, right? But we will see with some of these books that have been produced recently in the past 15 years, they aren't important, right? And a lot of these books, I'm making it full screen, a lot of these books, they're just words, right? They have no meaning. So I did read some classics last year. Um, and when I say classics, I don't mean old. I mean they ha- inherently they are old. So, for example, a book like Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, that book is old and it's a classic in my opinion, right? But it's not old. It's not classic because it's old, but it's a classic and it's old, right? So they go together, but they're not inherent together. If you know what I mean. So 2026, I think reading more classic literature is better. Obviously, I read some modern things, right? So last year I read Percy Jackson. That's not a classic, right? Well, unless you think it is, but I wouldn't deem it to be a classic. But arguably, those 5 books, I think it was 5 books, those are some of the greatest books I've read in a long time. And I loved them. I don't know if that was childhood, because I grew up listening to them. Well, I read them when I was younger, so I read the first ones when I was younger, but I read the recent ones when I was now. So obviously, you don't have to read just classics, but I'm gonna focus on reading more classics as they're classics for a reason, right? So Shakespeare, Dickens, Nietzsche, uh, anything, right? Doesn't whatever you want it to read, whatever you want to read, you read, and I would say just reading older classics is more favorable, right? It's a classic for a reason, right? It's been around for such a long period of time for a reason, right? It wouldn't have stuck around for hundreds of years, thousands of years if it wasn't a good book, right? So, and that's why it's harder to differentiate what is a good book and what is not, because in my head, a classic is a inherently good book, but also there are modern good books, right? So I know everyone loves to shit on self-help books like Atomic Habits and uh, just Rich Dad Poor Dad, whatever, right? But some of these books are good, and just because they're modern or self-help doesn't mean they're bad, right? What they'll do is they'll just take down other ideas from these older books, from these Stoics or from these moral philosophers, and they will just water it down into an easier way to understand it. Because trying to read some of these older books, Seneca, and it's easy. It's not easy to read, but it's not necessarily straightforward because it's not English. It's not written in English, so it's not just reading it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's like what the fuck just happened? You might have to read it 2, 3, 4 times to get what the fuck he just said. But with these watered down versions, it's more of a this, and this, and this, and this. You understand it first time, and it's easy to apply, right? So, my favorite book, not my favorite book, one of my favorite books is called Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's one of my favorite books, but it's not a classic, and it's not a old book. I don't know, what was it made like 5 years ago? It's not an old book, it's not a classic book, but I still deem it to be good as it helped me. I think I read it for the first time over 2 years ago. I read it in 2023, September 2023, which is about 2.5 years ago ish, right? So, and I think that was one of my favorite books, and it still to this day is my favorite book, right? And I recommend that book to everyone I've ever spoke to about books. And on my Goodreads, it's ranked, it's got 5 stars, and I don't really like to give out 5 stars because there are only certain books that give out 5 stars, right? Because if you give them out too much, it's just like, what is a 5 star, right? So reading is important, but reading what everyone else is reading isn't important. So half of these books, like, none of my friends would have heard of, like Nietzsche or some of these people, but I like them, and that's what's important. And what else is important? That they are good books, right? So I've got some less important good books. Actually, those are some of the greatest books, but there are some books that I've got that just, they aren't going to be remembered in 100 years, right? So I'm trying to think of one. So I got a book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, right? I read this book not last year. I think I read it in 2024. It's an okay book. It's just watered down shit. It's easily applicable. Like, it's easy to read. It's really easy to read. But it's not going to be a classic in 100 years, is it? But other things like The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings, which are my favourite books of all time, or even Harry Potter, these will be classics in 100 years, right? Your kids, your grandkids will be reading these books for future generations to come. And that's important, because if it can stand the test of time, then it will. It is inherently a good book, right? And only time will tell that. So if only time will tell that, then you can use time to tell what's a good book. Like 80% of the time, right? If it was old book, it's good, right? It might not be good to you, like you might not like it. You might not like it. It might not interest you. Like, there are some old books that I haven't read because they haven't interested me, right? But that is an easy way to tell a good book from a not good book. But it's hard. So I was gonna make a video on my favorite books from 2026, but there was too many. I read too many good books, right? So, but I'm just gonna list off some of my favorites. So, Marcus Aurelius Meditations. I'll put a picture up. Marcus Aurelius Meditations. I've read that. I think I've read the book twice now, and then I've gone twice like thoroughly, and then I've gone through it like and highlighted shit just because. As I said, the Percy Jackson books they were some of my favourite. And that was really good. And there were more, but it's just like they're good books, but like, do they carry any importance? I'm not sure. Like, I read. The thing is, I'm mixing up this year and last year because I've already read like 4 books this year, and it's only been 14 days. So I read Woke is Dead by Piers Morgan. Like, it was just a book, right? Should I have read it? Yes, because I like reading everything. Did I learn anything? No. Was it important? No. Did I enjoy reading it? Yes. And that's not because I agree with Piers Morgan, because if you agree with someone wholeheartedly on everything, then what do you even believe, right? Where are your morals? So obviously I agree with him on some things, but I don't agree with him on some things, right? That's just how it works. And if you agree with everything, with everyone, then what even are you? What are you? You just exist, and not in a good way, right? You just consume and consume and consume, and you don't produce, right? So, would I recommend reading it? No, unless you want to waste 5 hours, maybe it took. But I also read The Hobbit last year for the countless time. I read that book all the time. It's such a good book. But would I recommend that to everyone and everyone and anyone? I would, absolutely. Um, it's a classic for a reason, right? So as I was saying, 2026. I've already read a couple of books, and none of them were classics. I know I said I was going to read classics, but a lot of them were history books. So I read the last girl or something. It was about this girl who was captured by ISIS, a Yazidi woman in North Iraq, who was captured and taken hostage by ISIS. And horrendous book. Poor woman. What happened to her was awful, but it's good to read these sorts of books. Like, it was disgusting reading it. What happened to her was awful, and I condemn everyone who did anything to her. But it's important to read these books because it will help you gauge places, right? So it's important to know these things, right? Some people just go into conversations knowing nothing, and what do you add? And that's not in a hateful way, because I only really started reading about 3 years ago, and that's when I feel like I developed a consciousness, I like to say, right? So before I was age of 16, I would say I didn't have a consciousness. I was just existing. I was just consuming, existing. But since then, I've been, I wouldn't say producing, because I haven't really produced anything, but when I say consuming, I mean consuming like media or vices. Like, vices are like things that help you, that make you cope, like that you cope with, right? So gaming, porn, lust. It's like sins, I guess. Not really sins, but it's like, you know what I'm trying to say, right? Less of that and more productive things. So working, reading, studying, and whatnot, right? These things make you become a better human, and they greatly benefit you, right? So I'm going to university next year to study philosophy, politics, economics, right? So I did engineering in college because that's what I wanted to do for so many years. So I went to college and I did it. I got decent grades. I got good grades. I got like AAB, but I decided it just wasn't for me. Like, it's just not for me. And I knew I love politics, I love philosophy, and I love economics. Not as much as the other ones, but I still like economics, right? Because it's just so important to everything. So I've always been reading about it. So then I was just like, why didn't I just do it? So now I want to do it at university. So I'm doing it at university. I've applied. I've got offers, etc. Whatever. So I'm studying in preparation for that. That's what all the reading's for. So I don't just read classics. I'm not just looking to read classics, but I'm looking to read history, politics, economics, philosophy. I guess philosophy and classics are sort of the similar thing, because most philosophy is classics. Like, you know what I mean. So it's tough deciding what to read. And I know a lot of people say just read what you like, and I've probably said that before, but it's also important to read what's good. So I read a book last year called The Small Book of Ikigai, which is like a Japanese philosophy book, and I picked it up because it's a small book. Like, it's really small, like that big. It's like, should read in a day, right? But I was in a reading rut, so I picked it up, and because I wanted to read a book so I could get out of my reading rut. That's what I do. I read a quick, easy book that can get me out of a reading rut, so I can read even more, right? So I picked it up thinking, I'm just gonna read this in a day, 2 days, sorry. It took me like a month, right? This book was tiny, and it took me a month to read it. And it's because I forced myself. to read this book. I had no interest in it at the time. Looking back on it, I'd probably read it now because that sounds pretty cool. And from what I remember, the book wasn't bad. It was just I was forcing myself to read it, and it's like, what benefit does that do if I just force myself to sit there and read some book that I have no interest in, that I don't give a shit about? What interests? Why would that benefit me, right? It's much better to read a book that you have interest in, that's also a good book, rather than reading some shitty book that you just feel forced to read. Like, what's the point? You've just wasted a month, right? I tried to read 3-4 books a month, and that wasted that month. I think it was the month of like March, May. I also had exams, so that probably didn't help. But you see my point. But that's it, really. Just kind of like getting on here and just talking about random shit. It helps me get it out. I tend to write it down as well, like in my notebooks, but it's not the same. And my hands get tired, and I'd rather use my hand energy to study. So, yeah. This book's good. It's about liberalism, as you could probably tell by the front cover. It's about the difference of liberalism, the classical liberalism, and the neoliberalism. So neoliberalism being the George Floyd cancel culture, and you can tell classical literature, liberalism is, sorry. So that's what I'm reading at the moment. I'm also rereading Lord of the Rings, so I'm rereading The Return of the King, because I've read all of them. I haven't read The Hobbit in like half a year now, so I'm going to reread that, but I'm also rereading Return of the King, because I've read The Fellowship and Two Towers, so I'm going to reread that, I'm going to finish that, and then I need to get around to reading Game of Thrones, right? I bought it like last year, and I haven't watched it. I have held myself back. I haven't watched it, because I want to read it before I watch it. I haven't watched it, I haven't read it, I haven't fucking picked up the books. I bought the books, put them on my shelf, and I haven't touched them since. And I think you can see them. Where are they? Oh, they're on the bottom shelf. My bottom shelf, I've got too many books. My bottom shelf is double stacked, as you can tell. It's like 2 layers of books, which is really annoying. I'll close my window. But yeah, that's kind of it, to be honest. Just read what you think's important, and try to read classics. Is my one takeaway from this video. Reading classics. That's it, really. Peace.